at Snowcats, I think it's kind of our goal to try to create something that's very unique for everyone, whether it be in Denver or across the world as well, too. So we really think it's cool that we're doing a live stream for people all across the world, too. And we want to thank Shelly Roche for being here today. Yes. It really takes a village, we do believe, to create big impact in this world. So thank you all. And at that, I will start and introduce Shelly Roche from Tinykittens.
Thank you guys for coming. And thanks to everyone who's tuned in on the live stream. That's pretty cool. So also thanks to Snowcats and Weruva, because they both support lots of different rescue groups and rescue activities. So that's pretty awesome. I'm Shelly Roche, founder of, oh gosh, I need to not rock. Maybe I'll do this. There we go. Okay. I'm Shelly Roche, founder of Tinykittens. So for anyone who doesn't know about Tinykittens, we operate just outside of Vancouver, Canada, and we specialize in rescuing the unrescuable. So we work almost entirely with feral cats, which are cats that are born in the wild and have not interacted with humans. So this all started when I became a foster mom for my local shelter, for obvious reasons. And I know. So I started live streaming my foster kittens 24 hours a day and created a Facebook page so that people could follow along from one litter to the next. And then I brought home these 10 feral kittens just for a few days of socialization before they went back to the shelter to be adopted. Except you can probably see it turned out that they were really, really sick. And they also had 2 different species of ringworm, which is a highly contagious zoonotic fungus that's basically a nightmare to treat. So instead of spending the next 4 days socializing them, I spent the next 4 months fighting to save their lives. But that experience is what changed everything for me. I was shocked to realize how many feral cats existed, completely invisibly, right in my own neighborhood. And then to realize how much suffering was going on right in front of me. And there didn't seem to be much of a focus on helping them. Yep, sky. So I became a little bit obsessed with learning everything I could about feral cats. And the more I learned, the more convinced I became that we had to be able to do more to help them. So in 2015, Tinykittens went from me being a foster mom with the live stream to being an official nonprofit organization so that we could really focus on doing more to help the most vulnerable cats in our community, which are primarily the feral cats. We hoped that if we could figure out a way to rescue the cats we had been told were unrescuable, and then if we told their stories, those stories would have the power to change the narrative about feral cats on a global scale. Changing the narrative is how we get the world to believe these cats have value. It's how we get people to feel compassion instead of apathy. And that is really the key to all of this. Because people who believe cats have value will treat them with compassion. They'll become advocates for spaying and neutering. They'll support TNR and rescue efforts. And more resources will become available to all of us. This is Cassidy, the miracle kitten, and this is his story.
You're not alone, together we stand. I'll be by your side, you know I'll take your hand. When it gets cold, feels like the end. No place to go, you know I won't give in. No, I won't give in. Keep holding on, 'cause you know make it through. Just stay strong, 'cause you know I'm here for you, There's nothing you can say, and nothing you can do. There's no other way when it comes to the truth. So keep holding on, 'cause you know make it through. So far away, I wish you were here before it's too late. This could all disappear when the door.
Like a small boat on the ocean, sending big waves into motion. Like how a single word can make a heart open. I might only have one match, but I can make an explosion. All those things I didn't say, wrecking balls inside my brain. I will scream them loud tonight. Can you hear my voice this time? This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. My power's turned on. Starting right now, I'll be strong. I'll play my fight song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes, 'cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me. Losing friends and I'm chasing sleep. Everybody's worried about me. In too deep. Say I'm in too deep. In too deep. It's been 2 years. I miss my home, but there's fire burning in my bones. Still believe. Yeah, I still believe. And all of those things I didn't say, wrecking balls inside my brain. I will scream them loud tonight. Can you hear my voice this time? This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. My power's turned on. Starting right now, I'll be strong. I'll play my fight song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes, 'cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me.
And this is Cassidy now, all grown up and keeping his foster kittens in line. He's so dramatic. one of the really cool things about Cassidy's story is how he changed the narrative for his entire team of specialists and vets and techs and vet staff. He showed them that a gravely ill, injured, unwanted feral kitten can go on to live an incredible life if we just give them a chance. I've actually had this conversation with several of them, and they said they weren't really sure if we were doing the right thing at first by not euthanizing him, but then how happy they were that we did give him a chance and how much how much his story has impacted them. So that's pretty powerful and adorable. So another cat who changes the narrative is Hyatt, and this is his story.
There's my target cat. You can see how he's unstable, so he's got to come in. Got him. He's coming. He's in trouble.
We never know what we're going to get till we get them in.
See how he does. He's very ferocious.
But that's good aim.
I know, right?
Seriously. I don't think he could have hurt me doing this though. And
no.
he actually hit it. It's so much better than that stumbly guy that was around.
Mhm.
I'm optimistic.
He thought no one was watching. Hyatt's story shows us that he was worth saving even though he wasn't ready to live with humans. Sometimes people have a really hard time understanding why we would ever return one of our ferals to the wild, and a lot goes into that decision. Ultimately, though, we have an obligation to give each cat their best possible life based on their individual needs and not our preferences for them. So it's been a little more than a year since we returned Hyatt, and he visits our feeding station regularly, which is so great because we get to see how happy he is and how well he's doing. And it just helps us know that this was the right outcome for this awesome cat. Awesome, slightly ferocious cat. This is Hyatt's feral colony, which is on a rural property where we've cataloged more than 350 cats, including these two who have the most adorable bromance. So we're maintaining about a 90% spay and neuter rate, and we've socialized and adopted out more than 150 adults and kittens. Our awesome team of volunteers goes out and feeds and cares for the cats every single day, and they make sure anyone who shows up injured or sick like Hyatt comes in for medical treatment. And sometimes we do things like exams and vaccines and minor medical treatments right there in the forest or in the back of our van. And we do that because we want to keep them as healthy as possible and also keep them as low stress as possible, so it's way less stressful to do it just right there and let them go. Yep, Sloane. Both of these cats have been adopted, by the way. So you may notice that we wrap our ferals in towels when we need to handle them, and we do that because it's way less stressful for the cats and also makes it possible for us to do things like eye exams and look in their mouths, look at their teeth, and basically anything we need to do. So even with the most challenging of cats like Hyatt. I've actually been shocked by how much we've been able to do. It's so far beyond what I thought was possible and what I had been told and what I had read when I was first learning about feral cats. Pretty much all of my assumptions were wrong, and I'm pretty sure I still have a lot left to learn. Yep. Cat overpopulation means that heartbreak is inevitable. And until we can end overpopulation, all we can do is make sure every heartbreak we encounter along the way means something, and that every single life matters. So this is Nano's story.
Remember those walls I built? Baby, they're tumbling down. They didn't even put up a fight. They didn't even make a sound. I found a way to let you in, but I never really had a doubt. Standing in the light of your halo, I've got my angel now. It's like I've been awakened. Every rule I had you breaking. It's the risk that I'm taking. I ain't never gonna shut you out. Everywhere I'm looking now, I'm surrounded by your embrace. Baby, I can feel your halo. Know you're my saving grace. You're everything I need and more. It's written all over your face. Baby, I can see your halo. Your ray won't fade. Feel your halo. Halo, I can see your halo. Halo, feel your halo. Halo, see your halo. Halo. Hit me like the ray of sun, burning through my darkest night. You're the only one that I want. Think I'm addicted to your light. I swear I'll never fall again, but this don't even feel like falling. Gravity can't forget, so pull me back to the ground again. It's like I've been awakened. Every rule I had you break, it's a risk that I'm taking. I ain't ever gonna shut you out. Everywhere I'm looking now, I'm surrounded by your embrace. Baby, I can feel your halo. You know you're my saving grace. You're everything I need and more. It's written all over your I can see your halo. Pray you won't fade to your halo. Halo, I can see your halo. Halo, feel your halo. Halo, see your halo. Halo. Everywhere I'm looking now, I'm surrounded by your embrace. Baby, I can feel your halo. You know you're my saving grace. You're everything I need and more. It's written all over your face. Baby, I can see your halo. Pray you won't fade away.
We have the power to give them a voice. Their stories will inspire others to feel compassion and to take action. So Nano inspired us to take action. We did a big TNR fix-a-thon to help the rest of the cats in his colony. So here's just a glimpse of the ripple effect one tiny life can have simply because his story was heard.
Shelly brings to light that we have big problems with overpopulation right in our backyard, and that there's animals suffering. I'm Dr. Renee Ferguson. This is Dr. Cherise Sackles from Canada West, who's also, she is a veterinary surgeon specialist, and she's volunteered her day to come, which we totally appreciate.
She's a nanosurgeon.
Yay.
So.
And this is Dr. Anita Glups. This is Dr. Anita Glups, and she works at Mountain View. And she told Shelly we could do 60 in a day.
Oh, wow. Bradley giving Calvin a massage. Thank you. There's one more cat whose story was told because of Nano.
Well, I've got thick skin and an elastic heart, but your blade might be too sharp. I'm like a rubber band until you pull too hard. Yeah, I miss now, but I move fast. Won't see me fall apart. I've got an elastic heart. Won't see me fall apart. I will stay up through the night unless we clear won't close my eyes. Yes. I know I can survive. I walk too far to save my life, and I want it, I want my life so right. I'm doing everything I can, but another one bites the dust. It's hard to lose a chosen one. No, you did not break me. Yeah. I'm still fighting for peace. Well, I've got thick skin and an elastic heart, but your blade might be too sharp. I'm like a rubber band until you pull too hard. Yeah, I miss that, but I move fast. Won't see me fall apart.
So take a minute just to feel the emotion in this room. That's how much power one cat's story can have. And yes, his story was special. Sorry. But how do we know there aren't thousands more just like him out there? Mason and I talked about a lot of things in his last few days. And at one point, I asked him to send his friends our way if they needed help. And boy, has he. About 3 weeks ago, a young feral cat named Mirak showed up at our feeding station, and his head was tilted about 90 degrees to the side, and he couldn't walk without falling over. Thankfully, we had a volunteer who was there at the exact right time, and she was able to trap him so that we could help him. It turns out he has a ruptured eardrum from chronic ear infections, probably the result of a lifetime of ear mites. He's so cute. So we've been just delighted to discover he has the sweetest, most gentle spirit hiding just beneath his instinctive feral fearfulness. So last week we had some orphan kittens from his same colony who had just gotten cleared from ringworm treatment, and I couldn't resist introducing them just to see if they would find comfort in each other, like Mason had with his kittens. So here's what happened. So Mirak's story is still unfolding, and you can follow along on our live stream 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's always something going on. I checked a little bit earlier today, and they were all frolicking in the room, but sometimes they're snuggling in the nest. You never know what you're going to find when you tune in. But this is just one more cat whose story completely defies perceptions about feral cats. Cat overpopulation means cats like Grandpa Mason and Mirak, Cassidy, and so many others are either being routinely euthanized or dying without anyone even knowing they existed. They aren't getting the chance to tell their stories. The efforts we as rescuers are making every day just aren't working fast enough. And meanwhile, we are working ourselves to the point of exhaustion and hopelessness. Rescuers and animal welfare workers have some of the highest suicide rates. We're actually right up there with first responders. And it's because no matter how hard we work, we never have enough resources, and the problem remains overwhelming. Fortunately, though, there is hope. Every one of us in this room and watching online has the power to turn this around. But first, we need to take a step back and understand why we have a cat overpopulation crisis in the first place. Cat overpopulation is the result of a global compassion deficit. Feral cats have suffered from being hugely misunderstood. They have a long history of inhumane treatment. They've been classified and eradicated as pests. A perpetual lack of resources and understanding has resulted in harmful policies at shelters and vets that only reinforce perceptions that these cats are disposable and have no value. And all of that just feeds right back into our compassion deficit and makes that deficit grow. So the way we end the compassion deficit is by creating a compassion surplus. Each of us has the power to create compassion every single day by telling, sharing, and taking part in stories that change the narrative about feral cats. We need to tell stories that show their value, their incredible capacity for love, and the shocking and adorable things they're capable of when we just give them a chance to show us. Their stories have the power to create emotional connections that will replace apathy with compassion. And compassion inspires action, and action saves lives. So cute. So an interesting study from a few years ago found that people turned off the rational parts of their brain when getting advice from someone they considered an expert. So this is actually amazing news. I mean, it's a little bit scary, but it's also amazing for us because we as rescuers and cat aficionados are all experts. So that means I'm looking at a room full of people who have the power to tell other people what to think about cats. So if you start telling people these cats have value, these cats will have value. Another study showed that people who had just watched a video about child poverty were far more likely to take action to help a random stranger right after they watched it. Compassion is incredibly powerful. And it's something we all need to learn to use for our collective benefit. We need to understand what triggers it and how we can work toward inspiring compassion in everything we do. Because compassion leads to action, and action saves lives. A compassion surplus is the way we get more resources, more donors, more volunteers, foster parents, adopters, so we can inspire new people to care for the free-living cats in their own neighborhoods. And so we can do more TNR at a faster pace. And so everyday cat owners will feel good about spaying and neutering their own cats. And so vets, rescuers, and policymakers see there are viable and more humane alternatives to mass euthanasia, knowing they can access the resources to make changes. That's Quinn Bunny, she was adopted too. Compassion is contagious, and every compassionate act, big or small, adds up. So here's your challenge for this fabulous Snowcats weekend. I want each of you to tell or share or become part of a story that will inspire compassion. This is easier than you might think. It can be as simple as sharing your favorite rescue story on social media. Or as involved as starting a TNR project to help the cats in your neighborhood. So whether you end up playing a role in your own story or sharing someone else's story, Your actions will help turn the compassion deficit into a compassion surplus. Very fashionable. Baby Oracuda. So tiny. So, and just one more thing that's super important. We need to learn how to show ourselves compassion, and we also need to support each other and work harder to show each other compassion, even when we disagree or do things differently. We have opportunities every day to react with judgment or with compassion, and the more we practice reacting with compassion, the easier it will become. And we'll be helping make the world a kinder, gentler place for all of us. So, we have a pretty, thank you. we have a pretty wonderful and compassionate global community watching and chatting on our live stream 24/7. Lots of you guys are there. And so anytime you need a little compassion or some kitten therapy or a laugh or an escape from everything we see on the news, we're always around. It's also great to watch at work. It definitely boosts productivity, as some of you clearly know. So yeah. So we do have some time for Q&A. If you guys have anything you want to talk about, I'm happy to answer questions. Easy questions. No, I'm just kidding. Janet Young. Oh, that's a great question. Oh, how many he snuggled. Okay. Right. I don't know, because yeah, somebody made a list and I kept meaning to look at it, but it's definitely in the dozens. Oh, thank you. Yes, 80 something. A little help from the audience. Yeah, so he impacted lots of young minds. So, Chris. Oh, a lot. Yeah, and we don't wear gloves or anything because it's just, we don't need to most of the time. And it's easier to handle them without gloves. But actually the video of me in the forest, there's like some deep puncture wounds going on there. Yeah. But yeah, it happens a lot, but not like, only when you're not paying attention or when you try to do something like a little bit stupid, then you're at greater risk. But using the towels and the way we've learned how to handle them is actually pretty safe, and we're trying to sort of get other people to try and start with gloves, and then once you're comfortable handling them and putting the towel around them and all that, then you can take the gloves off, and then you may have a tiny bit of bloodshed every now and then, but it grows back. Yes? That's a great question. The question was, how did we find resources and veterinary services and homes, et cetera, when we were first getting started? So when we first started Tinykittens, we were just doing regular TNR and then just tried to learn as much as we could and keep doing better. And we're lucky to have on our board Dr. Ferguson, who's a wonderful vet. And so she is brave enough to, a lot of vets aren't comfortable working with ferals, but we sort of, like, she would come out and do ultrasounds and we would restrain and she would do the medical stuff. And so we've all learned together that what we can do. And so getting your vet team to buy in is important because they have to sort of support you and understand what kinds of meds to use, and that sometimes you have to be creative about how you administer meds and stuff like that. And then social media was how we do, like, we're not open to the public at all. So we just are online. So people get to know them on the internet and then apply. So people apply, like several of the ferals from Hyatt's Forest live in California or, you know, all over the place. And so people fall in love with them and then adopt them out. And it also, that's how we raise money also, is online. So just telling their stories, you don't have to make like a big video about it, but if you just start telling stories, people will eventually start to catch on and start to follow you, and then it goes from there. You're welcome. Anybody? Oh, yes. Oh, the question is how the Oracuda is doing. She's actually doing really well. She has had 3 surgeries to try to fix her palate, and she still has a stubborn tiny hole just behind her incisors and like a little hole further back. So she can only kibble, which she's very outraged about. And she does get the occasional sinus infection, so we get the snot rockets for, you know, a month. So we probably will try again with another surgery just to keep trying to close up those little holes, because then she could eat whatever she wanted and we wouldn't have the infections all the time. Well, not all the time, they've been okay, but she's doing great. She doesn't know that she's any different. She's just wild and rambunctious and sometimes aggressively snuggly. Yeah. There. Yes. Oh, that's great. Thank you for watching. Oh. Oh. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for watching. Yes. Well, I don't know about that, but the question was, do I just go with my gut, or how to make some of the less traditional decisions that have been made along the way? Yeah, it's a lot of impulse and gut instinct and trying to always have like an escape route, like a plan B on hand. One of the things I learned when I was doing tech startups in Silicon Valley was, if you're going to fail, fail fast. So I'm not afraid to fail, but I know that when something's not working, then I have a plan to go in and change it up and see if it will work then. So a lot of it is just kind of like taking time to think about the different cats, what their personalities are like, how they've reacted to different things, and then what their emotional and psychological needs are. Like for Mirak, he wanted to interact with the other cats that were that came in with him, but they weren't super interested in like playing with him. And the orphan kittens were like desperate for a mama cat, or, you know, someone to snuggle and play with. And so it seemed like it could be a good thing. So, but it totally depends on the cat and the scenario and, you know, what I've had for breakfast that day. Yeah, how much tequila? Yes. Yeah, hopefully. Oh, that's a great question. The question is, what's next for us now that sort of kitten season's hopefully winding down? We've had a year, and like Gwen's exhausted and I'm exhausted, just like emotionally, and it's just been like a really intense year. So we're sort of, after this weekend, we're gonna just regroup. We've got some ferals that are recovering from dentals. We've got Miroc and Judith and Fiera need a home, and Watson and Robin need a home. So we've got some adoptions we need to do. And then we're gonna try to hit the TNR really hard over the winter, because then we can get the females spayed, because they're not all gonna be pregnant when they come in. So it's, the problem is we've kind of gotten really bad at the R part of the TNR. And so that slows us down a lot, because then we always have to do dentals, and that's 14 days of recovery. And then, you know, they have like, ringworm. They all have ringworm. And so then that's like a huge nightmare. And then, we've got lots of just all the unexpected things that come in that take a lot of recovery. And then each feral reacts differently. And then you can, we usually house them together and they do great. But occasionally you get one that doesn't want to be with everyone else. So we fill up, and then we've got all these medical things happening, and so it slows down our ability to actually go out and keep TNRing. So we're trying to find a balance between, continuing to get the numbers game with the TNR and keep our colonies under control, and then also being able to provide exceptional medical care and get them treated and returned or adopted out as quickly as possible. So that's sort of the plan next. But as you probably noticed, any plan we try to create lasts about 30 seconds. So that will change by probably this afternoon. Yes. Awesome. Yep. 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 So the question is, when we introduce cats, we almost always just throw them in together, and that's not something you would ever do with like a new kitten, or you're trying to introduce a cat into your household. You want to follow a much different process, but it is because these cats are born in a communal setting. They're raised communally. They often are co-parented. They're very social, and so they've learned. They're super respectful of other cats almost all of the time, and so they don't go out and start fights. They sort of, if they're put in with a cat, like if they're adopted into a home with a pre-existing cat, that cat is going to take some time. But the feral will usually just kind of be like, okay, well, this is my new home, and that cat doesn't want to hang out, so I'm not going to hang out right now, but later on I will. So I think it's because they've been raised with each other, and they have all those relationships, and they actually love each other. So yeah. Yes. So the question is about Aura, if there's any way to reconstruct her palate or her nasal turbinates, which are like the tiny bones inside the nose that help to filter out all the pathogens so that she doesn't get infections. And unfortunately, the answer is no. Her first surgery, they used a donor dog bone, a plate from a donor dog, like a leg bone, actually. They made a little plate, and then they used that to attach her soft and hard palates so that it was more stable. But there's no way to do the turbinates because it's just such a fragile structure in the first place. There's no substitute for that. And then to try to patch the holes, the only thing that they do, like they've just been stitching them together, her little holes now, and hoping that they hold, and they've gotten better, but they could also take a flap and fold it over, and that may or may not work, but it's much more extensive. So she is super happy. Yep. Yeah. My only concern is if she starts to get chronic infections, then that introduces a whole host of other issues. So trying to balance, how much surgery is too much? The age-old question. Yes. That's an excellent question. Question is what do we do to combat compassion fatigue? This year has been tough, like I said. This is water. For now. But we actually, I think a lot of us hit a wall this year just with, it's Stanley and all of the tough cases that didn't go the way we wanted them to. And so I finally contacted a grief counselor, a grief and trauma and loss counselor who specializes in animal services. So she knows, she's done a lot of studies about animals and losing a pet and all of that. So she's got it she gets where we're coming from. And so she's come in to do a couple of critical incident sessions with our group, whichever people were working with a particular cat or after a traumatic event. So she comes out and sort of helps us navigate that. And then she's also available to anyone on the team to do private counseling as much as anyone wants, because I want people to be able to continue to do this and to not get compassion fatigue. And that's not going to cure everything, but it's at least a step in the right direction. The other thing they say is good is self-care, which I think most rescuers suck at. And so that's something that we really have to work on for ourselves. Like I said in the presentation about showing compassion to ourselves, that's one of the things we need to do better, is not feel selfish by taking time off, going on vacation, doing stuff you enjoy. That's a critical part of being able to do the work we do. So, and then encouraging other people, if you see a fellow rescuer on vacation, be happy for them. Don't be resentful or, act like they're not doing their part, right? Because we just have to really support each other and be able to talk about the hard times and just kind of be there for each other. Is that it? Am I cut off? Right.
So tell them about that.
Yeah, so tomorrow there's a meet and greet for 2 hours, and I think there might be a few tickets left, but you have to buy them.
I don't know about that.
Chris doesn't know anything about it. Don't ask him.
But I am security, so don't.
He will bounce you if you don't have your tickets.
Yeah.
It's upstairs.
That sounds good.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
That sounds good to me. Yeah.
Second floor.
Good.
Yeah. And now a few words from Chris.
No words from me. Other than you should offer tissues when you start this,
I know. I need.
sad music, and it's.
If I'm on this roller coaster, so are you.
Hey, I went on the ride. All right, I'll take it. Okay. So, thank you, Shelly, for everything.